Chapter 10 of The Flaming Forest. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Roger Moline. The Flaming Forest by James Oliver Curwood. Chapter 10. In that big deep chair which must have been St. Pierre's own, Marie-Anne sat facing Carrigan. Between its great arms, her slim little figure seemed diminutive and out of place. Her brown eyes were level and clear, waiting. They were not warm or nervous, but so coolly and calmly beautiful that they disturbed Carrigan. She raised her hands, her slim fingers crumpling for a moment in the soft, thick coils of her hair. That little movement, the unconscious feminism of it, the way she folded her hands in her lap afterward, disturbed Carrigan even more. What a glory on earth it must be to possess a woman like that! The thought made him uneasy. And she sat waiting, a vivid, softly breathing question mark against the warm coloring of the upholstered chair. "When you shot me," he began, "I saw you, first, standing over me. I thought you had come to finish me. It was then that I saw something in your face, horror, amazement, as though you had done something you did not know you were doing. You see, I want to be charitable. I want to understand. I want to excuse you if I can. Won't you tell me why you shot me, and why that change came over you when you saw me lying there?" "No, M'sieu David, I shall not tell." She was not antagonistic or defiant. Her voice was not raised, nor did it betray an unusual emotion. It was simply decisive, and the unflinching steadiness of her eyes and the way in which she sat with her hands folded gave to it an unqualified definiteness. "You mean that I must make my own guess?" She nodded. "Or get it out of St. Pierre?" "If St. Pierre wishes to tell you, yes." "Well," he leaned a little toward her, "after that you dragged me up into the shade, dressed my wounds and made me comfortable. In a hazy sort of way I knew what was going on. And a curious thing happened. At times—" he leaned still a little nearer to her. "At times there seemed to be two of you." He was not looking at her hands, or he would have seen her fingers slowly tighten in her lap. "You were badly hurt," she said. "It is not strange that you should have imagined things, M'sieu David." "And I seemed to hear two voices," he went on. She made no answer, but continued to look at him steadily. "And the other had hair that was like copper and gold fire in the sun. I would see your face and then hers. Again and again, and since then I have thought I was a heavy load for your hands to drag up through that sand to the shade alone." She held up her two hands, looking at them. "They are strong," she said. "They are small," he insisted, "and I doubt if they could drag me across this floor." For the first time the quiet of her eyes gave way to a warm fire. "It was hard work," she said, and the note in her voice gave him warning that he was approaching the dead line again. "Bateese says I was a fool for doing it. And if you saw two of me, or three or four, it doesn't matter. Are you through questioning me, M'sieu David? If so, I have a number of things to do." He made a gesture of despair. "No, I am not through. But why ask you questions if you won't answer them?" "I simply cannot. You must wait." "For your husband?" "Yes, for St. Pierre." He was silent for a moment, then said, "I raved about a number of things when I was sick, didn't I?" "You did, and especially about what you thought happened in the sand. You called this other person the Fire Goddess. You were so near dying that of course it wasn't amusing. Otherwise it would have been. You see, my hair is black, almost." Again, in a quick movement, her fingers were crumpling the lustrous coils on the crown of her head. "Why do you say 'almost'?" he asked. "Because St. Pierre has often told me that when I am in the sun there are red fires in it. And the sun was very bright that afternoon in the sand, M'sieu David." "I think I understand," he nodded. "And I'm rather glad, too. I like to know that it was you who dragged me up into the shade after trying to kill me. It proves you aren't quite so savage as—" "Carmin Fanchet," she interrupted him softly. "You talked about her in your sickness, M'sieu David. It made me terribly afraid of you, so much so that at times I almost wondered if Bateese wasn't right. It made me understand what would happen to me if I should let you go. What terrible thing did she do to you? What could she have done more terrible than I have done?" "Is that why you have given your men orders to kill me if I try to escape?" he asked. "Because I talked about this woman, Carmin Fanchet?" "Yes, it is because of Carmin Fanchet that I am keeping you for St. Pierre," she acknowledged. "If you had no mercy for her, you could have none for me. What terrible thing did she do to you, monsieur?" "Nothing to me," he said, feeling that she was putting him where the earth was unsteady under his feet again. "But her brother was a criminal of the worst sort. And I was convinced then, and am convinced now, that his sister was a partner in his crimes. She was very beautiful, and that, I think, was what saved her." He was fingering his unlighted cigar as he spoke. When he looked up, he was surprised at the swift change that had come into the face of St. Pierre's wife. Her cheeks were flaming, and there were burning fires screened behind the long lashes of her eyes. But her voice was unchanged. It was without a quiver that betrayed the emotion which had sent the hot flush into her face. "Then you judged her without absolute knowledge of fact? You judged her, as you hinted in your fever, because she fought so desperately to save a brother who had gone wrong?" "I believe she was bad." The long lashes fell lower, like fringes of velvet closing over the fire in her eyes. "But you didn't know!" "Not absolutely," he conceded. "But investigations—" "Might have shown her to be one of the most wonderful women that ever lived, M'sieu David. It is not hard to fight for a good brother, but if he is bad it may take an angel to do it." He stared, thoughts tangling themselves in his head. A slow shame crept over him. She had cornered him. She had convicted him of unfairness to the one creature on earth his strength and his manhood were bound to protect, a woman. She had convicted him of judging without fact. And in his head a voice seemed to cry out to him, "What did Carmin Fanchet ever do to you?" He rose suddenly to his feet and stood at the back of his chair, his hands gripping the top of it. "Maybe you are right," he said. "Maybe I was wrong. I remember now that when I got Fanchet I manacled him, and she sat beside him all through that first night. I didn't intend to sleep, but I was tired, and did. I must have slept for an hour, and she roused me, trying to get the key to the handcuffs. She had the opportunity then to kill me." Triumph swept over the face that was looking up at him. "Yes, she could have killed you while you slept. But she didn't. Why?" "I don't know. Perhaps she had the idea of getting the key and letting her brother do the job. 2 or 3 days later I am convinced she would not have hesitated. I caught her twice trying to steal my gun. And a third time, late at night, when we were within a day or so of Athabasca Landing,